Hey guys, welcome back to the Steel City Roundtable. As always, I am your host, Mark. Welcome for coming back to see us. To my left is my favorite person on the planet,
It's
Miss
me.
Kelly Gibson.
Hi, guys.
Oh God, here it starts already. So we have a great guest today here. This gentleman I've known for quite a while. He actually gave my start in podcasting. When I came out of rehab, he was gracious enough to let me spend some time on his podcast, and it was amazing. So I want to introduce to you guys Scott Siverts of the Berm Pit Podcast.
Woo! Yay, Scott.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. This whole setup here is amazing. I love it. This is fantastic. I'm jealous because this is where I want to be at some point with my own stuff, and this is awesome.
We take cashier's checks, credit cards, cash, whatever you want to pay us, bro.
Yeah.
We'll bring you in.
This is great.
So a lot of people already know you from your influencing and whatnot, but why don't you just give folks a little bit of background about who you are?
Yeah. Scott Benjamin Siverts, born and raised in South Hills of Pittsburgh. Born in a family of educators. Both my parents are teachers. My mom's still a professor. She teaches at Geneva College. It's a Christian college in Beaver Falls. And I had an older brother. He's a jarhead. He went in the Marine Corps straight out of high school. He's still a Marine. He's now an officer. He was enlisted right out of high school, but he ended up going through what's called the MESEP program. It's the Marine Corps Enlisted Officer Training Program. Became an officer. He's done like 9 combat tours, and out of high school I had to do the same thing. I couldn't let him be the only one there.
Can't one you up.
Yeah, it's a little sibling rivalry. But yeah, I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. Spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. Got out of the Corps and just started working. Got in the civilian workforce. I worked at South Hills Movers actually here in South Hills, Pittsburgh. Started working the bar scene. Worked at a couple of famous nightclubs in the city. If you're familiar with Tequila Willie's, it was called the Boardwalk Complex. Mm-hmm. Worked at Margarita Mom's in Station Square. Saddle Ridge was there. Before Saddle Ridge was Rock Jungle. Worked at Diesel. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved over to the south side to work at Diesel, that's when I started working at Mario's. Mario's on East Carson Street. The owner there was a friend of mine that worked at Tequila Willie's. He was a bartender there, Mike Beck. He's a former Army guy. So him and I had a connection through military service. And then just have been working at Mario's for since 2009. They put me in a management role in Shadyside. They bought a location. It was called Doc's Place on Walnut Street. And I was the general manager there from 2011 till currently. But I'm talking back in the day in 2011, I was pretty active as a manager, so much so that Mike was like, look, you're doing everybody's job for them. Like, you got to pull it back a little. You can spend some time in the office and relax. So if I wasn't in the office doing like orders or inventory or scheduling, I was watching a podcast. I was watching Joe Rogan. I was watching, I liked Fighter and the Kid with Brendan Schaub and Brian Cowan. I thought their friendship was unique, and that made me laugh. And then eventually I started watching Patrick Bet-David. I thought he was really good. And I would always say to Mike, like, man, wouldn't it be cool just to do something like this? And Mike always was like, yeah, sure. And then right before COVID, I was like, I have to. This was January 2020. I was like, I have to do something. I have to do one of my own. This is what I want to do. This is my dream. This is what I want, something of my own. And I approached the ownership they had just purchased Peter's Pub in Oakland. And I was like, they're closed Mondays and Tuesdays over there. Why wouldn't I be able to use the upstairs space maybe I'll start a podcast up there and film once a week. And then I decided I was like, I just asked the ownership, can I do this up there? And they put the kibosh on it because they didn't think, if somebody's there and they're drinking the alcohol that's there and we're closed, there could be an issue there, especially if somebody gets in their car and drives or anything like that. So they put the kibosh on that, and then COVID hit, and that kind of stumped all the plans for that. And then 2022, I turned 40, and I was camping out in the state of Washington in an RV with Mike, and he was like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life, man? You just turned 40. You know, do you want to do this forever? Do you want to be a bar manager forever? Do you want to be, you know, and he mentioned this guy that's been with us for a long time that was a manager actually at Doc's place, TK. Yeah. And he's like, you don't want to be a 60-year-old manager still managing a bar. I said, dude, I told you, I've always wanted to, you know, start my own thing with the podcast. And he was like, what are you waiting for? He was like, just do it. Came home from that trip, and I immediately started looking around and figuring out what could I do? What could I get my own equipment? Do I try and rent space?
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
But I ended up reaching out to a guy by the name of Jack Welsh. He's a host of the Greenfield Finest podcast. And he had started that podcast in 2019 or 2020. And I went and toured his studios out in Etna, actually. It was, they're the Taylor Gang crew over there. That studio space is more geared towards music because of Wiz Khalifa and his crew over there. That's the studio they used. I went over there. It didn't feel right. I toured another studio downtown, and that didn't feel right at all. And then I reached out to Studio Me one day. I went and took a tour of Studio Me with Peter, and I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for, and I just got after it. I mean, it was an obsession. I just obsessed over it. I filmed probably, we're having some technical issues here, but I just obsessed over it. So I filmed probably 7 or 8 podcasts before I even put out one. I was very fortunate at the time that my sister-in-law was engaged to a UFC fighter. So he was like one of the first guys I interviewed, which it worked out perfectly because he had a fight coming up. And that was the first one I was able to put out right before his fight. It worked out really well. And then I just started asking people, hey, do you want to do a podcast like Dominic Izzo? Everybody just kind of was like, yeah. Nobody said no. To me, I maybe wouldn't get a response, or maybe they would say, hey, later, or reach out to me in a couple of months, or whatever. So I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have, been. It's almost like I know you guys believe in a higher power. There's some things that have happened along the way that you see God's hand move, because it's like a divine providence thing. It's like, holy crap, I didn't expect this, or this door open, or that door open. I had guys reaching out to me out of nowhere. This last Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, I get a message from Paul Spatafore's manager. He's in town. Paul Spatafore's a famous boxer here in Pittsburgh area. He also had dealt with, he'd be an interesting guest for you guys.
Yeah.
Because he's dealt with substance abuse issues. He had a rough time, but he's a famous boxer here in Pittsburgh. I always say that you've made it in Pittsburgh. You're a Pittsburgh legend or icon when you're on the wall at Permane Brothers.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
You go to
That is definitely true.
Permane Brothers in the strip district here in Pennsylvania, and you got Jim Leland, Myron Cope, Bruno Sammartino, Kurt Angle's on the wall, and then Paul Spatafore's on the wall too. So I was like, I got one of the guys on the Permane Brothers wall to do the podcast. But he was promoting a book. He came on, but it's stuff like that. Just was like, man, one thing after another. I just kept working. There were times where I was discouraged, but I just kept the grind. I kept getting after it, and just didn't get discouraged. I didn't quit. There was plenty of podcasts I put out that I thought, man, this is going to be great. And then, it gets 20 views, and it's like, all right, no problem. On to the next one. We'll keep grinding, keep going.
Yeah.
And just didn't quit. So it's been a ride here. Turning now 42 this year. And the only thing I wish was that I would have done it sooner. Wish I would have done it sooner.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job, man. You're doing a great job.
And you were great too, by the way. You were awesome, man.
Thanks,
It was a really enjoyable podcast. I got a lot of great response from people, including local law enforcement that had worked with you here in the city of Pittsburgh. That was like, man, that was great.
Cool.
I've been binge watching your podcast.
Well, I feel bad for you then, because
You said your phone died?
It says it's got the low battery.
Just keep it on the main phone.
That's
Don't
what
worry
I've
about. Don't worry about the other two. I don't want to cut Scott out. I don't want to look like I'm taking the camera. So just leave it on the main.
you should
Yep,
leave,
that's what I'm doing.
leave this in. This is real. This is
Yeah, this is what you go through when you finance yourselves. You find other drunks and alcoholics and addicts to play in your playhouse.
I had this thing fully charged when I brought it in.
Bullshit, dude. The
Yeah,
thing was
right.
at 50%. I told you it was going to die, you silly son of a bitch. Anyway, Mike's new, so he
Leave it
gets a
in.
pass. Mike's new, so he gets a pass. But,
Sweet.
yeah,
I have to tell you, I have a selfie with Jim Leland.
Do you?
I do on the phone.
He
Yep.
just got inducted in the Hall of Fame this year.
Sure
Yep.
did.
Yeah.
Yep, I have a selfie with him. I was like,
That's awesome.
I like put it on Facebook. I was like, I know you're all cool, but are you? I took a selfie with Jim Leland. Cool.
That's awesome.
hopefully one day he'll be like, I got a selfie with Kelly Gibson.
Maybe. Who knows?
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. So, when I came out of rehab, I, was all over the place, and I saw that you had gotten signed by Spreely, and I was like, holy shit, man, the dude's making it happen. And I reached out to you, and I was like, if you ever need a drunk, mentally ill ex-cop to come on your show, just joking around, and you're like, yeah, when do you want to do it? I was like, shit, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I told a lot of my story, and I did it on your podcast. And I want to say thank you, because if I wouldn't have done that, this wouldn't be here today. And, we're just like you. We struggle every day. We're putting out as much as we can, and we're just trying to reach people. And like I said, heartfelt thanks. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have known that this was something I was supposed to do. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think you guys are going to reach a lot of people. I think you guys can touch a lot of lives. I do. I think you, both of you have a great story. And there's a podcast the three of us did together for the Berm Pit Podcast that I actually just held on to because, too, I've had repeat guests.
Yeah.
I've had guests that come on, then, down the line, I'll wait. And the other thing, too, is as I've gotten more traction, more subscribers on YouTube and everything, I kind of wanted to hold on to some things so that the people that I've had probably 3 or 4 that I've held on to that I filmed probably back, I think it's February, March timeframe, where I'm like, if I wait a little bit, there's more exposure here for these people. Kevin Redford, who started now his own podcast too. He owns Redford Photography in Peters Township. He started his own thing, so I'm like, I'll hold on to that one. I filmed that one, I think, in January, and I told him, I'm like, dude, I'll just hold on to this one. Wait till I get some more. I'm getting some traction here. I'm growing, and then we'll put it out there later. I'd like to space out I've done multiple ones with Shane Witt.
Yep.
He's a finance guy. Just spread his out. We filmed one too about financial markets recently. Not recently. It was probably March, April. And I've held on to that one just because as we get closer to the Bitcoin conference that's been going on, he's a big Bitcoin guy, big crypto guy. I was like, we'll hold on to that one. So the podcast the three of us did together that I'll get out there is really good too. Might not release it simultaneously with this one, but we'll close to it so get more exposure. Might sync with this one.
Yeah. Well, Kelly stole the show on that one, so I don't really want to see
Yeah,
it.
she was great.
Sorry.
So, you've been doing
Sorry,
this, for
not
about a year now,
sorry.
right? A little over a year?
Yeah, a little over a year. Yeah.
So, how was the progress for you? Like, from having the inception of the idea to doing all the background, which you and I both know it's a pain in the ass, right, to get started, and then to get to where you are now. Like, what's that been like for you?
Well, it's very admirable what you're doing to take an idea and then to bring it to fruition. To say, I'm going to make this. You got a logo, you got the setup, the flag looks great. You have people willing to help you here, and you have a great co-host. It is a grind. It is tough, to take an idea and then to see a vision and then to put it into reality. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of guts too, because you put something out there, nobody watches it, or you put something out there and the comment section can be brutal sometimes, and
Kelly knows that.
you read the comments, it's rough.
Oh,
That's one of the first rules. I was like, don't read comments because they're just going to piss you off.
well, that was extreme.
Yeah.
I had 2 instances of backlash.
Attacks, personal attacks.
They were personal attacks on things that I had talked about on the show, and also my ex dipshit. He may have sicked somebody on me and said some horrible.
We don't make accusations here. We're just going by the facts. But,
So the fact is, yeah, that person could have only got that information from him. So
and as we said before, we don't have a lot of rules here. But two things we don't deal with is hate speech and personal attacks. If you put that stuff on our Facebook, on our Instagram, we're deleting it and we're inviting you on the show, because if you have the balls to do that on a camera, come and do it with us.
I love that.
All right.
That's good. I love
Seriously, let's talk it out. You want to talk it out? You want to talk it out? Let's do it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's good. You probably wouldn't have your ex on though, huh?
Not without a police officer present.
Active.
Active.
Rephrase that. Active.
An active police officer that would stand here with a big gun.
The people that I still talk to at the police department, you might get a phone call.
Yeah. Realsies.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got in big with Dominic Izzo.
Yeah, he was one of the guys I reached out to originally too, because you and I were texting back and forth yesterday or the day before, I believe, and he says a lot of controversial stuff, especially when it comes to law enforcement. He's a prior law enforcement guy.
Like 15 years in Chicago area, right?
Yeah, and his backstory is he did get fired. He's open about his background. He got fired. He spoke out about some things. He did some things personally that probably violated some code of conduct, ethical stuff, and then he tried to throw his chief under the bus too, but his chief was guilty of some things, and he ended up actually being fired. And then he ran for county sheriff in, I believe that's Cook County out there. That's where Chicago is. He wrote a book. He's got a big platform. But yeah, I reached out to him, and he was one of the first guys I had on. The reason why, like you were going back and forth with him, he loves arguing with people. He was arguing with me because he has a channel on YouTube. It's called Izzo Wing Chun or something like that. His martial arts background is in wrestling and Wing Chun, and I just would shit on Wing Chun all the time.
I mean, isn't that like a really spicy Chinese dish?
It's kung fu, and I was like, dude, it's that you don't see. My argument to him was like, you don't see any UFC fighter announced. Yeah.
I see like jujitsu, any type of martial art comes before Wing Chun.
It's kung fu. It's basically kung fu.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wang Chung. Isn't that a song?
Man,
that was
Wang Chun tonight.
Yeah, but him and I would go back and forth and argue. And when I started the podcast, I sent him some clips, and I was like, hey, I just started a podcast. I'd love to have you on. We can argue in person.
Yeah.
Or through a remote Zoom or whatever. And he was like, yeah, sign me up. That's the thing, too, is that I think you have to adopt here in the podcast game, which I think you guys do, which is when you reach out to me and said, hey, if you ever want to have someone come on and tell their story, which is what the whole reason why I started the podcast, which it's gone a completely different direction now, but I started because of the storytelling aspect. I want to have somebody come on, tell their story, and highlight that person and just listen.
Yeah.
This side of things, when I'm the guest, I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll do this for you anytime. But I like listening and just hearing someone's story and asking questions, and I'm very inquisitive. So with the adopting the mentality of not saying no to people, no matter whether they're, they got 50 followers on Instagram or they got, 1 million followers on Instagram. I haven't said no to anybody that's reached out to me personally, said, hey, I'd love to be a guest. No problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we feel. The only thing we don't do is if we know someone has active charges with law enforcement, we don't want that on the show because we don't want to promote that. We don't want to say good job.
Yeah.
Smart.
That's just one of the things.
And the reason why I mentioned Dominic Izzo is I think he has a lot of really good things to say. I think he's great. I watch his rants of Izzo. I see all his clips on Instagram. It's just he and I differ in a foundational level and an ethical level on a lot of the things that he says.
Sure.
And I'm not going to go into it because I'd rather talk to him. So Dominic, hey, have me on, brother. I'll come on anytime.
He would too. He doesn't turn anybody down either, no matter.
I may not be, I'm not a use of force expert. I don't have the experience he has in a lot of aspects. I'm just an ex-cop that looks at things and goes, hey, I don't like this. I don't like that. This is the way things are going. This is the way they should be, just basic, like, ex-cop mind brain,
Right.
But yeah, he puts a lot of good stuff out there, and I know you guys are thick as thieves now because you guys do something like every week now, right?
We're really close, yeah. Now, I mean, we talk probably once or twice a week just on the phone. He shoots stuff at me because he's part owner too of Spreely. He's
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's one of the owners.
Cool.
So the main owner, the people that run it are a gentleman by the name of Terry Littlepage, and then there's a woman that's really good too, Chelsea. She's kind of helping me with all the social media stuff. She kind of has control over that. But he's invested into that, and he's part owner of that. So when I worked with him originally, he was like, hey, "This is really good. Like, you might have something here." And then I was going to have, I had things planned. It's crazy. I write everything down. I plan out everything that I do from the beginning. You know, it was like, all right, come up with a logo, come up with a format. What platforms do I want to have them on? Do I want to do visual? So I got YouTube and Spotify is where I started. And then it was like, all right, I have an audio platform, I have a visual platform. Then, you know, what's the intro going to be? What's, you know, how long do I want the podcast to last? You know, there was all these things I wrote down. Then I started writing down guests that I want to have on. Like, I'd like to reach out to this person, this person, this person. So, and I had the schedule of how I want things to be put out. And I don't know if you remember, there was an incident that happened maybe a year or so ago where Tyree Nichols was the gentleman's name, and he was shot and gunned down by some law enforcement, and it was it looked pretty bad. I don't know if it was a big national news story, but I reached out to actually Ryan Dunn to have him on to get his take, because at the time he was a city police officer.
Yeah, I remember I saw the episode with him. It was really good.
But so that was I was supposed to put that out well before that, and he was like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. I can't give my opinion on that because he was, you know, active in the city. He didn't want to get any blowback. So the second time I worked with Izzo, I just reached out to him and said, hey, I got a guy that doesn't want to talk about this. Do you want to talk about it? And of course he said yes. And then I worked with him one more time with my buddy Matt Wakulik, who now co-hosts the live show on Spreely. And we did a live show on YouTube. And right after that is when he was like, hey, I'm going to give all your info, your email to a guy by the name of Terry Littlepage. He's going to reach out to you. I think he's interested in having you come join Spreely. He goes, I don't pay much, but it's something. And they might be able to find you some sponsors, and you know, you can get hooked up with a network. It'll be on like Roku and Apple. And I didn't even know what Spreely was. I was like, oh, shit, okay. And then I looked into it, and I'm like, oh, they've been around for a while. Their headquarters are out of Vegas. And I was like, it's a legit company. It's just not very well known, but it is on Roku. It's on Apple TV. It's on Fire Stick. And I was like, so, if, you know, for whatever reason I end up getting canceled on YouTube, there's a platform you can go to and watch that.
You've been saying that on a couple. I've been binge watching his episodes, and his co-host says some things, and he's like, "Oh, thanks, bye YouTube."
I mean, eventually, I think it's going to happen because we just got YouTube as a. I don't know if you have a YouTube Studio app.
Yeah, it's got the content parameters and what you have to do and what you can't do.
Right. So monetization, if you want to be monetized on YouTube, you have to. There's two tiers to it. There's one is 3,000 public watch hours. If you hit 3,000 public watch hours and you have 1,000 subscribers, you can then offer a payment subscription.
We're almost there. We have 40 subscribers.
Yeah.
We're almost there.
Well, you'll get there. It's a grind. It is a grind because I don't know how long I sat on 89 subscribers or 90 subscribers, and I was like, this isn't moving at all. And then 6 months go by, and it's all you start putting more stuff out. You get traction. You just got to stay with it. It's just like anything else. You know, when Mike Beck took over Mario's, he was like, dude, there was a year and a half there where it was like, oh boy, I'm in over my head. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And then, you know, next thing you know, Max Talbot lives behind the house, and he's getting the Penguins in the bar, and all of a sudden it just takes off. The Penguins end up winning a Stanley Cup, and Mario's becomes this giant, you know, conglomerate of bars now. But you just got to keep grinding away. But so we hit the 3,000 watch hour mark, but we didn't want to, myself, Matt, and I talked with people at Spreely, we didn't want to offer any payments. Like, say you guys put out a podcast and you put it on your subscription part of YouTube and say, you know, you can watch us for $1.99 or $2.99. I'm not doing that. And also, too, I didn't have I had some merchandise, too. You can sell merchandise on YouTube, but I didn't have enough for it to be, and I didn't have, you know, my wife eventually, I think, will end up doing the merchandise side of things, mailing stuff out, but it's a lot because you got a full-time job, and, you know, even putting out the content stuff. So then trying to sell merchandise, it's like having another full-time job. You have to put time in. It's
I mean, that's what we found is the hardest.
Yeah. Maybe, you know, maybe we could talk to my kid about doing the social media aspect.
I mean, that's the roughest part. That's the roughest thing we're having because we all work full-time jobs. I work like 60, 65 hours a week. You know, I don't have a lot of time at home, and I work crazy hours. So like I'm getting home at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's not a good time to put out social content because nobody's awake.
Sure.
You know, so that it's like, so you're a full-time dad.
Right.
You know, you've got a job,
Right.
and you do a podcast. I mean, how do you make that work? Because we're struggling just to get this thing out every week.
Yeah, and my kid's in college. So
Tell her she can do an internship. Just change her major, and you know.
Yeah, you guys could offer an internship.
Yeah, I know, but it's nobody wants an internship that pays $1.
But I was gonna say, and this is nowhere, not even close to her. She's
not-
child psychology with a minor in history.
Not in her wheelhouse.
She can just tell us how screwed up we are.
Well, she tells me that anyway. So like,
How old is she?
21.
All right. Right on. Right on. That's awesome. Yeah, but the YouTube thing with getting canceled or whatever, we just hit 4,000. The second tier is 4,000. That's where you can have like the ad revenue sharing where ads can play on your page. So we just hit 4,000 actually over the weekend.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal.
My wife then applied. There's an application process. You know, you get notified if you're eligible, which we meet all the requirements as far as subscribers and watch hours, but they review your channel. It usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. They tell you that. We got an email back from YouTube, and it was like, you know, we're going to review your channel, make sure everything's in compliance with YouTube. And I was like, we ain't getting that, probably. But that's why we're on Spreely TV. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. But when it comes to managing your time, it is tough. And you would know that. 65 hours you're on the road.
Yeah, like I worked 16 hours last night. I got 2 hours sleep this morning, and then I'm up setting up with these guys and trying to get the show going. And you know, folks, we set this up every week. Like,
Yeah, we break down setup.
You walked into an amazing situation. Like, you did your research, you did your due diligence. Thank you to the military for that, and good family upbringing. But like, you did everything you had to figure out how to get things going. Like, I'm OCD like a mofo, but I'm like chaos. You know what I mean? Like, I'm mass chaos 24/7. So, you know, this whole thing is difficult, you know, because it's just tough to have to try to manage the time because we don't want to be here for 6 hours. You know, granted, we love talking to you guys, but we don't want to be here for 6 hours.
Right.
You know, Studio Me, I got to meet those guys, Peter, and I think his name is Keith. Keith came and set our stuff up for us.
That's awesome.
We couldn't figure out how to get the shit working.
We had everything we needed except like two
Like
wires.
2 cables. Like, he looked at me and goes, "You did pretty good for not knowing what the hell you're doing." Because I had everything, right? I had 2 of this, 3 of that, 4 of this, 5 of that, 2 of this, you know. And then we hooked everything up, and we were trying to use Riverside at the time. And Riverside is like Chinese math.
Yeah.
I was like, this is too hard. I'm an ex-cop, and I'm a ex-drunk truck driver. Like, I'm not the smartest guy in the block, but it took us forever to get things going. And it's like, you know, you say a lot, you just got to keep plugging away, keep plugging away, keep plugging away.
Yep.
Like, I get to that point where I'm just like, man, I don't know if I want to do it this week. You know,
you
I don't
get
know if I want to get up. I don't want to come over here. I don't want to look
Yeah,
at Kelly's
right.
beautiful face and hear her mouth running.
Yeah, right. This
know,
dude lives for it. He lives for it.
I do, but it's like, it's hard sometimes
It is
because,
hard.
you know, spoils and rewards. Like, we don't ask for money. We don't go out looking for sponsors. We're not doing any of that shit, right? Like, if someone wants to come to us and say, "Hey, listen, we like what you're doing. We want to help you," that's great, but we don't want to give up creative control. We don't want to be told who we have to have on.
Right.
Like, we want to keep this
Right.
with what we started it. You
Right.
know what I mean? And that's to be the home for people that want to tell stories.
Yeah.
So with you, you know, you started off the same way. Like, what did it feel like when you got that call and they said, "Hey, listen, we want to pay you to do this"?
It was wild because I thought, man, I've only been at this for it was like 9 months at the time, and I was like, I never expected it to go this route. And then, of course, what you're saying there is true. When you get sponsors, not so much. If someone's willing to sponsor you, they're not going to tell you how to run the show. But if you get with a network or a platform like, for instance, the Valuetainment Network is Patrick Bet-David's network. He has multiple podcasts on that network. Say down the line, you sent him a video, almost like an application, like, you know, Mr. Bet-David, we love, you know, everything you're doing. The Steel City Roundtable would love to be a part of your network. And he was like, man, I like these guys. I like Mark and Kelly. They would fit with us. It'd be a good fit. We'd love to bring them on, but they would manage you.
Yeah, they're going to give you content requirements and things like that.
Right.
You know, and we don't want to give, like, down the road, that's a discussion to have.
Right.
You know, like right now, we're still a backyard podcast. We're just friends doing a thing.
Right.
You know, like I have to thank Trek Management here in the North Side because they let us film at one of their properties. That's how we have this beautiful studio.
People that don't see, this is a great setup, by the way. This is amazing. People aren't seeing the ins and outs of outside of what's off the camera or what's here, but it is a great setup. It's fantastic.
Not bad for a trained monkey, right?
This is fantastic. I'm jealous. This is my end game is to have my own stuff one day.
And it
Yeah,
keeps
so-
changing because I just am never satisfied.
Yeah, every week it's something different. Like last week it was just the two of us. So like we had to make the table smaller and then we had to turn it this way and then the flag had to come down and then this had to happen and I was like, oh my God.
Attention to detail. You got to.
You know what? I think the thing is, it's like since I got sober, you know, a lot of things have become clear. You know, like my brain has been healing. My friends are more important. My relationships are more important. I want to say my gifts are more important. I don't mean gifts in like what I can do. I mean gifts as in what's been made available to me being sober. Because this came to me with my man Kenny
Yeah, our dude.
back in October. We thought this thing up together. And granted, I fired him like 3 times, but he kept coming back.
He quit like 4 times. So
Yeah,
like you fired him and then he quit and then I yelled at him, told him he was a dickhead, and, you know, like the norm.
You know, she's telling me not to bring him back because he's not ready, and I'm like, hey, he's one of my boys. Like, I got to keep him in this. Like, you know, this is a family thing. Like, this will never change. You know, even if someone offers us a studio, like we like doing this.
Yeah.
We like doing the podcast the way it is. You know, it's just we want to get to the point one day where we can have someone say, hey, listen, we like what you're doing. We think what you're doing is good. We want to help you a little bit. Because we're not in this to make any money. You know, it's a business.
Right.
But, you know, by business, it's LLC. If
Right.
any other way, it's not defined as a business because it makes no money. But, you know, Kelly, tell me if I'm wrong, but we're here because we've been given a second chance.
Yeah, this is our second chance. And to be perfectly honest, like, I plug on my Facebook and Instagram and, like, all my shit, and I'm sending it out there. I have a lot of friends in recovery that, like, literally wait for these to come out so that they can see what kind of nonsense we're doing this week, you know, or who we're bringing on this week, or, you know, what he calls me or what I call him or what I say and he tells me I can't say that. You know what I mean? Like, whatever.
No, I'm really proud of you guys. This is awesome. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man, like I said, you put the bug in me, and you've probably been my biggest supporter when I started this thing.
You were great. I mean, you were great. The first podcast we did together, and you can find that on YouTube. It's episode 42, I believe.
Yeah, 42.
Yep, 42.
And
I've got it memorized.
yeah, it's YouTube. It's on Rumble and Spreely TV too, on Spotify. But you were great, man. Your ability to tell your story and to just get that message across, it was powerful. It was moving too. People watch that. It was really good.
I think the big thing is making guests feel comfortable, like safe. Like this is an environment where they can do anything, say anything. And that's how you made me feel. You know, I came on your show and I was nervous as hell because I'm like, I'm going to tell people about how much of a drunken asshole I am.
You opened up too.
Yeah.
Kudos
and-
to you for being open about
And
it.
it's just gotten worse. You know, it's just gotten worse. I just keep talking now. But
It's awesome.
you know,
That's awesome.
it was comfortable. I felt safe in that environment. I felt like I could talk there, and I think that's what we're trying to build here. Is we want people like we have an episode coming out with a friend of ours, Dr. Casey Phillips from 5 Points Chiropractic, and in that episode, he came out of nowhere to tell me he had a story of recovery.
Wow.
Yeah,
You didn't know about that.
no,
No.
he said he nobody knew about it.
Wow.
He voiced it here.
Wow.
And we're just waiting to put that one out. And I mean, you know, that spoke volumes for us. You know, to have somebody that I respect, you know, because Dr. Casey Phillips, 5 Point Chiropractics, Northside, and I think he said, where's he living? South Hills, I think.
Yep.
You know, I've been going to him for years, and he spoke to me when I was in the police academy. He used to come out and talk about like healthy living, taking care of your posture, and things like that. So I've known him for 17 years. And to not know this about him, and him to come on and say to us that this is where I wanted to say this, like that tells me we're doing the right thing.
And what a compliment that is too to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it
Really is.
felt. I think, other than the day I got my 1 year chip
Yeah.
for being sober for a year, I think that was the most.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I'll be on 15 months. I'm like 7 days, 8 days.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it was like it's the best I've felt that I can remember, because it was just like, it wasn't validation, because that's the way I used to live, right? I needed validation. I needed people to tell me I was good enough. I needed people to tell me that I was doing a good job. It was just like this feeling of complete acceptance of where I am in my life right now. And thanks, Casey. Appreciate it.
That's awesome. That's great.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're authentic and genuine too. You can't be fake in this business. Like, you try and put on a character, you have to just be authentically who you guys are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm nuts, so it's hysterical sometimes.
yeah. When she came in, we have to have her put her clothes on because she was, half naked.
I was half naked, and I was thinking about like poofing my hair out like 80s style and wearing bright red lipstick.
The dynamic between you two, you feed off each other, and it's fantastic. I think you guys really work good together.
You wouldn't know that we've only known each other since like November.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Kenny
we've just
actually
been, like,
introduced us.
Yeah, Kenny introduced us, and episode 1, you can check that out on Spotify and YouTube. It's where we kind of talk about ourselves a little bit and give you a little background. We'll probably do another one here soon to build on that. But yeah, I mean, so family life, working man,
It's a grind, huh?
podcasting.
It's a grind.
Talk about the military a little bit, because it's a really rough topic for a lot of people right now, talking about the military, because all the things that have changed in the last 20 years.
You're right. I can talk about all that.
Yeah, just talk about your life in the military a little bit.
Yeah, I joined right out of high school. I actually went to Bethel Park High School, which is where that Thomas Matthew Crooks went to school there. He was the.
I'll have to ask you if you know my boyfriend.
Okay.
He's a year older than you.
Okay. Yeah, I graduated in 2001.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I signed the delayed entry. I signed up on the delayed entry program in 2000, and I left right after graduation. And my brother, being who he was, and then I had an uncle that was a master gunnery sergeant, which is an E9. He was stationed at Quantico, and what he did was assign people to certain MOSs. Now, what an MOS is, a military occupational specialty, and when you sign up for Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, now there's a Space Force, you get to kind of write down a wish list of the jobs that you want. So I put down MP. My brother said, yeah, you should probably get into some, maybe even think about going into computer intelligence, something like that, because my ASVAB score was really high. It was a 92. ASVAB is a test that you take for eligibility. I think the lowest you can get is a 32. You can get a waiver in the Marine Corps. That's why they say that we're all a bunch of dumb rocks. 27 is the low end for a Marine.
Isn't it that you eat crayons?
Crayon eaters is the big one, yeah. Jarhead crayon eater. But I had a. You're right. Good for you for knowing that. Crayon eaters is what they call Marines, crayon eaters, because we are just a bunch of dumb rocks. You're either that's the thing they say, that you're either a rock or a rocket scientist. But here, end up going to a boot camp at Parris Island. The way it works is, if you're east of the Mississippi River, you go to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Parris Island. If you're west of the Mississippi, you go to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. So east of the Mississippi, everyone goes to Parris Island. Parris Island is the famous one. That's what you saw in Full Metal Jacket. Mm-hmm. And it's Full Metal Jacket's boot camp there in the very beginning of that movie. It's very realistic. That's very true to life. The only thing that it's different is you normally have 3 drill instructors. They only had 1, And so went to boot camp. Boot camp is 13 weeks long. Typically, they give you 10 days leave after boot camp, and then you go to either the School of Infantry, SOI, if you're going to be a grunt, or if you're going to do anything else, you have to go to what's called MCT, which is Marine Combat Training. The reason for that is the motto that every Marine's a rifleman. Mm-hmm. So every Marine's got to be trained. They got to qualify once a year with, at the time, the service weapon was the M16A2. And then the service pistol was the 9mm Beretta. And so I ended up getting the 10 days leave, and then I got selected for recruiter's assistance, which was cool. I got to, kind of put on my dress blues, tour all the schools that, I got to go back to Bethel Park, Peters, St. Clair, Mount Lebanon, all the local schools in the area. Sat up a table with another sergeant who was the recruiter. We tried to get people to sign up and enter the delayed entry program. So I ended up going to MCT. Now, at this time, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have orders for my MOS. I have no clue. And my brother is actually stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and that's where MCT and SOI is. So I'm down there. I drive down to North Carolina. It was nice having my brother at the time. I think he was a captain or a first lieutenant. He was on base housing with his wife. I left my car with him, went to MCT. MCT was 4 weeks long. You're in the field constantly. You're training. You're getting to fire, throwing grenades, getting to fire different weapons that most of those Marines will never fire again because they're not going to be grunts. So, you get to fire the saw. You get to, there's a ton of stuff you got to do. You got to, basically live in the field, live what it's like to be a grunt in combat environments, limited sleep, limited food, managing your water supply, stuff like that. We did, hand-to-hand combat stuff. At the time, the Marines had they still do, it's advanced a lot now, but this was the early bursts of the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. Everything's an acronym, it's MCMAP. So the MCMAP, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. So they started to get a belt system, tan, green, brown, black. And then after MCT, you get your orders, what you're going to do. And I thought my third option on that wish list was I wanted to be a MAGTAF planner. That was Marine Ground Air Task Force, basically planning out how a combat unit would take, like in Fallujah. You would plan out, hey, we're got to go this way. You're going to probably meet some fire over here. Mortars are going to have to go here. That's what I wanted to do, behind the scenes planning stuff. My brother, he was like, dude, I don't want you to be a grunt. I don't want you to, because 9/11 happened when I was in boot camp. And he was like, I don't want you to, it was selfish of him. And I kind of wanted to, and looking back, I think I would have been better off being a grunt. But, so I ended up getting orders. I thought I was going to go to Little Creek, Virginia for this MOS school to be a MAGTAF planner. When I got the orders, they're sending me out to 29 Palms, California in the desert mountains to do a computer intelligence school. So I went to Marine Communications and Electronics School. And I was like, what the fuck, man? I don't want to do this. This is not what I want to do. So I went out there, and the school, too, was 6 months. So I go out there in December of '01, and I don't graduate the school until May. And it was, I was there through Christmas, I didn't take any leave, I didn't take any time off. I was there through New Year's, all the way through. And then here we graduate the class, and you get a list of duty stations. And a lot of times this still happens today. They'll put the list up, and they'll do the ranking of the class, how you scored. You were the first in the class, you did the best. You get to pick your duty station. Where do you want to go? So there was a lot of great duty stations on there. Hawaii, Germany, there was Guam, and I was like, man, there's a lot of cool places here. I want to travel the world a little bit. Then I saw Okinawa, Japan, and I was like, that's interesting. To say I was in the Pacific, but that's a 2-year mandatory. So I was like, that's a long time to be over there and away from my family. But I was like, you know what, fuck it. This is why I signed up. So I ended up going to Okinawa, and I got stationed with a great guy. My CO at the time, my commanding officer, was a chief warrant officer. He was a helicopter pilot. And I'm not very tech savvy. And going through that school was rough for me, this computer intelligence school. I had to take courses that I thought, that's why I joined the Marine Corps, because I didn't want to go to college. And here I had to go and sit through all these courses. And of course, we were always PTing, but
Excuse me.
I ended up going over there, and my chief warrant officer, he loved me. He was a gym rat, just like us. He was constantly in the gym. I'd see him on the gym on base. And after the first month, he was like, Siverts, you happy here doing what you're doing with the Marine Corps? And I was like, yes, sir. And he was like, don't fucking bullshit me. He's like, I can tell right now you're not fucking happy. He's like, look, I saw on your wish list you want to be an MP. There's a opportunity here for you to go and just train, get some law enforcement training, and we need people to be on gate guard duty, because at the time they still had an elevated security risk because of 9/11. And he's like, you'll be doing working with K-9 unit. You won't have dogs, but you'll be able to go as cars come on base. You'll search every third car.
Yeah, as they come through the Jersey barriers up to the gates.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And we'd wave at every third or fourth car to the side. We search it. We'd have some long-handled mirrors looking underneath the vehicle, searching the vehicle, and I did that for probably 4 to 5 months, and then and it was the graveyard shift too. It was like from 2100 to 05, and it was
Brutal.
every night. And it was like my sleep schedule was all fucked up, which is now what I do now, pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
But that was like a 6 month, 4 to 6 month thing, and then here eventually they send me back to my old unit, and I'm in the chow hall, and again I see Chief Warrant Officer Sierra. You're the man, brother. If for whatever reason you ever see this or you ever see anything that I do, reach out because I'd love to talk with you. And he was like, "I'm not bringing you back in the unit, man." He goes, "I can tell you're suffering over there with all these nerds that are doing this." And he was like, he goes, "I got another opportunity here. There's an opening to go and be a primary marksmanship instructor." He goes, "You got great, your range scores are great, pistol scores are great. Go out. We're going to send you to a school on Camp Hansen on Okinawa. It's a 12-week course, and you're going to be a primary marksmanship instructor. You're going to battle site zero, learn how to battle site zero weapons for Marines. Marines are going to qualify. You'll be out on the range. You're going to coach them. You're going to be proficient. Some other weapons. Does that sound like something you want to do?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is awesome." So
I get to blow shit up.
so yeah, I got to be a coach at, and at the time I was a junior enlisted Marine. I was an E3. I was a Lance Corporal. I had my promotion warrant on the desk for Corporal, but that was the best thing that I ever did. And looking back, looking back, I should have utilized that in some way, and I could have been a civilian, training. There's a company here locally called Kingdom Defense, and they train civilians. They'll get I think it's the Act 235 to be able to be like private security. I could have done some of that.
Yeah.
Looking back, I thought, man, why didn't I do that? I had the resume on it. My Marine Corps, my service record book is great. My proficiency and conduct marks were great. I could have done that, but the bar business too at the time in Okinawa, that's where I started working at bars, doing security. I got a job off base on the weekend because the rifle range, you have a week of classroom instructions where you're teaching about, we didn't have scopes at that time. It was all iron sights. So you had your front sight tip, rear sight elevation. You had to battle sight zero your weapon specifically to your Marine because everybody's vision is different. There were some Marines that were left eye dominant, but they were right-handed.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we either got to teach these Marines to shoot left-handed, or we got to battle sight zero their weapon so that their right eye is going to be able to, because you can't, use your rifle on the left eye. So there's a lot of things there that, I just love, but it was only Monday through Friday in the class and then Monday through Friday on the range. And then I had the weekends off. And I was like, I wasn't a big drinker at the time. They said, when you go to Okinawa, they say you're either going to get big in the gym all the time. There's not a lot to do over there. You're going to get religious because there's churches everywhere. Off base too. There was a church called Agape Church. I used to go there all the time. Or you're going to get drunk because there's a ton of bars off base.
I'll take number 3, please, for $1,000.
Well, so I wasn't a big drinker at the time. I wasn't, I was getting big. I was in the gym all the time. And that's why I had that connection with that Chief Warrant Officer. But here I end up just going off base a couple times, and I go to this nightclub, and I see this guy, looks like a Marine, and he's beating the shit out of this dude. He's a security guard. And I was like, "Hey, man, are you a Marine?" He's like, "I just got out." He goes, "I married an officer in Kadena Air Force Base, and now I'm kind of stuck over here. I already, I was discharged and did my time." And he's like, "I got a job here." He's like, "If you want a job, I could probably get you a job." And I was like, "Fuck yeah." So I was making some extra money on the weekends, bouncing at a nightclub in Okinawa, Japan. It was frequented. It was right outside of Kadena Air Force Base on Gate 2 Street. That's what it's called. It's called Gate 2 Street. There was a ton of bars on that street. It was almost like South Side.
Yeah.
There's bars on every corner. There was Whisper Alley. If you don't know what that is, it's like where the Marines can go and get their rocks off, so to speak. With the
Nice.
Yeah, and then there was
That's Herpes Way.
I had my roommate went there every Wednesday, like it was scheduled.
His church.
It was a scheduled event. He would take a 6-pack of Corona. He's like, "I'm going to Whisper Alley," and he would just go off base. He was a sick man. I loved him though. But there was also the Banana Show. You ever hear about the Banana Show?
No.
Over there, it's famous. So you can Google this, folks. You can Google this. It's a real thing. People, I'm sure, have heard about the Donkey Show in Mexico. Go to Tijuana. There's a Donkey Show. You can use your imagination there what that is. But the Banana Show was You go to this bar, you sit around, there's a stage, like it's a stripper on stage, and she does a little show. But then she starts, playing with fruits and vegetables. And the banana, she, would find places for it, and then she'd be able to shoot it across the room. And of course, Marines being
I want to see that
the
shit.
Marines, the sickos that we are, you'd be in there, and there was always one Marine that would pick it up and eat it.
Ew.
I mean, it's awful. And then she'd hear the other thing too, which was crazy, was here she could take a roll of quarters. She'd take it out of a thing, she'd put it in there, and then she would yell out, how many? And the Marines would be like, 3. And she'd be like, poof, poof, poof. She'd shoot out 3 quarters, She'd make change for you. So it was wild, man. But my experience in the Marine Corps, looking back, the primary marksmanship instructor is actually to where I got the name, the Berm Pit. So when you're on the rifle range, and they still today, a lot of the qualifications have changed, but I don't believe I know the yard lines have remained the same. Marines will qualify from the 2, the 3, and the 500-yard line. And the targets would change. The silhouettes would change as you got further back. So the 3 targets that you see on the Berm Pit logo are the 2, the 3, and the 500-yard line. Now the berm, what a berm is it's a plot of land, and it would run under the targets. And behind the targets is something you'd call the pits. So Marines were back there manually lifting these targets up and down on like a lever system. And you're back there, 2 Marines to 1 target. And how it would work is you'd split your group of Marines that are qualifying that week into 2 groups. The AM group that was shooting, the other group would be in the pits pulling the targets. The PM group then would be the Marines that were in the pits, and they would come out and shoot in the afternoon. And then the AM group would go into the pits. So when you're pulling pits, me and Mark would be back there. You hear this round, it was the 5.56 round, you would hear it really good, go through this target. All right, we'd pull it down, we'd find the hole, we'd mark it, and then we'd send the target back up, and then the Marines could adjust where they need to go. Like if they were off it was off the silhouette and they didn't hit the target, they can make adjustments because they practice all week and then Thursday, Friday, qualify. If you didn't qualify Thursday, you get another chance on Friday. But Monday through Wednesday, they're practicing, and the Marines down in the pits are, marking the targets so the Marines can adjust, and they have the books they're writing in to make adjustments. And when you're back there, let's say me and Mark are back there, and we're not in the same unit. Maybe that different units, whether it's motor T, whether you're a cook, whether you're MP, whatever you are, they send you for the week to qualify. Every Marine's got to qualify. Every Marine's a rifleman. So once a year, you got to qualify. So me and you were back there, we're bullshitting all day, getting to know each other, and that's the Berm Pit. It was supposed to be, originally it was me and another person sitting there bullshitting, getting to know each other, tell each other's story. So that's my Marine Corps background there has now segued into an idea for a podcast name and format and some other things. So it opened some doors for me eventually. So my Marine Corps background there was something there was a blessing. I'm glad I did. I'll obviously never regret it. It's something I'm very proud of to be able to say I was a United States Marine, and I still have a connection out there to things. I had guys hit me up. We talked a little bit of this before we started filming. I had guys hit me up when the Trump thing happened here in Butler, and a guy that I was actually in primary marksmanship instructor school with, he was a recon Marine, he's still active duty. He was like, man, this is crazy. He goes, I don't know if you know this. He goes, I was stationed in Newport, Rhode Island with a Secret Service guy. He was like, I was at the Naval Warfare College, and the Secret Service guy reached out to me. He's like, hey, they all record the comms and chatter of everything. Dan Bongino, we said this, he mentioned this too. He was a Secret Service guy with Obama, and I think Bongino was a Marine too. And they said, hey, they record all the comms and chatter, so if there was like a stand-down order or a don't engage order, or let's say local law enforcement did see the guy and they put it through the comms, it'll all be out there. So.
See, I think I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but none of this makes sense. I listen a lot to Dan Bongino because he's getting stuff out 3-4 days before the news networks are getting it out. So he's got sources, that are deep embedded.
So the news can whitewash it.
Well, it's like, for example.
Oh, look, it's squeaky clean now.
For example, with Miss Kamala, they're talking about redconning. where, they said she was the czar of the border, and now they're backtracking on all the news networks, and they're erasing that statement. They're arguing that statement, even though there's quotes from Biden saying that she is in charge of the border. So, there's so many things that have happened in the last 2 weeks. You got Biden stepping down all of a sudden. You got Kamala Harris up there. You got this Secret Service disaster where, I'm not trying to rip anybody apart. It's clear that, I think they only had 3 post standers that were Secret Service. And those are the people that are actually assigned to the president. The rest of them were third-party law enforcement, like Butler County, Butler Sheriff's, Butler Police Department, whatever.
Right.
You've got the ex-president. So, number one, he may not be the president active anymore, but he still is the president.
Right.
Forever.
He gets a Secret Service detail for the rest of his life.
Gets a Secret Service detail for the rest of his life. And the fact that there were so many breakdowns, no drones overhead, no aerial surveillance, rooftops that were open that had an obscured view from the counter sniper pits. Wherever the counter snipers were, they couldn't see these certain spots. Like, this was thrown together so poorly, it almost looks like it was meant to happen.
How dare you?
Well, there was a
Right,
there-
you're 100% right.
There was a guy that they interviewed, and he said that he had gone to a previous rally, and that walking in, he actually commented on how many snipers there were. There were snipers on all the buildings, every single top. He could pinpoint people on the side, around the stage, like everywhere. And he was like, I actually said to my daughter, "This is weird because that roof's open, that roof's open."
I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but, if you've got the president, you've got to cover every possible inch of that facility. Dan Bongino, he's on Rumble, he's on Spotify, YouTube, he's got his own channel, guy's amazing. Talking about how, like I said, no aerial surveillance, but yet the bad guy had aerial surveillance that day. He was on the ground with a rangefinder that day. Where's the advanced intelligence? Where is the plan? I can't wait till all this stuff comes out, all the actual factual documents, text and phone calls and whatever comes out, because there's so many lapses that could have been avoided and should have been avoided, because if it was Obama, if it was Biden, this wouldn't have happened. I'm not saying they wanted Trump to get shot.
Right.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that they dropped the ball. Yep. They didn't, there's they've asked for numerous resources and they've been turned down, but yet Cheadle, before she resigned, is saying, "Oh, that, not to my knowledge, that's never happened." Meanwhile, it's documented that it's happening.
Right.
Like, why would you pull surveillance off of him? Because they don't care about him.
Yeah.
And now they're going to care because he's going to be president again. So
That's what it looks like. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. At the very minimum, it's gross negligence on the part of the Secret Service and even some local law enforcement. You saw that story come out where that Thomas Matthew Crooks was on the roof, and a local law enforcement guy actually, I think, went up the ladder and addressed it, and he pointed his firearm at him. The Crooks pointed his firearm.
And he fell off he fell down and
Yeah.
landed on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those things, like, as a tactical standpoint, you get somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, there's a guy with a gun on the roof." I'm not immediately running up there by myself or with another guy. I am radioing it to the command, and then I'm asking them for instructions, like, am I holding in place or am I moving?
Right.
Wait for 10. Okay, I'll wait for 10 guys and we'll move. But it's like there's no plan.
Right.
Like, they just kind of, and I don't blame the local law enforcement, because they're ultimately being run by the Secret Service at that time. They are an agency of the Secret Service. So anything they do reflects on the Secret Service. Anything they don't do reflects on the Secret Service.
Right.
At the end of the day, the Secret Service dropped the ball. They didn't give a shit about Trump, and they let all these things happen.
Agreed.
So, I mean,
I saw another, or I was listening to something, it might have been on TV, and it was just like background noise. They were interviewing someone, and they said, "Isn't using a drone where the president's going to be and you're a civilian, isn't that considered a threat?" No, it's not. And then the second one was, he was actively using a rangefinder in the same area. That's not a threat? And they answered, no, that's not a threat.
have you watched any of the Dan Bongino stuff, or was just a little
That
bit I
was
showed you
just
today?
today.
So I'm sure you've seen a bunch of it. Like, Bongino talks about how they actually had eyes on him about an hour before Trump went on stage, and then local law enforcement lost him somewhere, and then they ended up put Trump on the X. Here's the thing: you've got an unknown variable, possible threat. You treat it as a threat until you can prove that it's not a threat. So why didn't they keep Trump in a safe location until they mitigated the threat. The Secret Service put him up there as a sacrificial lamb and said, everything's fine. When there was still this guy with a rangefinder, they didn't know about the drone footage. They didn't know about a lot of this stuff. Not everybody there knew about all this stuff, right? There was horrible communication, apparently. But at the end of the day, you've got a guy that you think is suspicious. It's the fucking president. Like, if it was me, yeah, put me up on stage. If I get my head blown off, big deal, whatever. But the
I
president,
care. Fuck.
I know, but what I'm saying is the president, man. Like, you gotta put his safety above all else, And they just didn't. There was just tremendous lax of judgment, and then a complete cover up afterwards.
Well,
So,
I mean, I told you this. I was talking to you about this when, I don't think we were on here. I mean, it has been tried, they tried to put him in jail, and that didn't work. And they tried to get him kicked out of office, and that didn't work. And now that he's running again, and it looks like he's going to win, so now what's left?
yeah.
But I'm not saying anything.
Right.
And Scott, since you do a lot of political stuff on your show, what's your opinion of this whole thing? This whole Trump shooting and then the cover up afterwards? And I am using the word cover up because that's what it is.
I think your take's very good, and Bongino's a great source to watch or listen to. So I think everything you said there, I agree with, 100%. There's we can question why there was this kind of lapse in security failure there by the Secret Service, whether it was deliberate, whether it was just gross negligence. Who knows? I don't know. And you said, eventually some things we'll find some things out. I don't know about that because, even reviewing the, those comms and chatter, in 1981, Ronald Reagan, there was an attempted assassination on him in 1981. And you can go to secretservice.gov. They actually did release the comms and chatters from the Secret Service from 81. That's how long they've been recording these things. Mm-hmm. And again, the head of the Secret Service that testified on Capitol Hill in Congress,
I don't know if you call it testified because she didn't say shit.
It was bad.
Yeah.
You watch that. But she did say that they did not record the comms and chatter that day. Mm-hmm. But this is 81, Reagan attempted assassination. The comms and chatters didn't get released. And you can go and find them on secretservice.gov. I posted the article, actually, and also the link on my story. They didn't release it until 2011, 30 years later. So when are we going to find out all the, different things here around this? We might never. I mean, even JFK today, people still don't know what happened there. So your take on that with what happened in Butler with Trump, I agree with 100%. I don't know if I can add anything to it. And also earlier in the podcast, you said it's been a wild couple weeks there because you have a current president that's ending his campaign, stepping aside for the
Communist.
Female vice president.
Communist.
Good for you. Good for you. You could join us on our live show on Mondays.
And I already know you're paying attention to what's on my phone, so she is a fucking communist.
So Kamala Harris, who's the Attorney General in California, some say she was able to get to certain positions in California with different connections and maybe sleeping her way into certain positions with Willie Brown. But she was Attorney General. She was a senator in California, along with Dianne Feinstein, who's
Look
now
at her track record as a
Attorney General. She was
a punishing Attorney General.
She was brutal.
Yeah.
She was brutal.
Yeah, people with like minute marijuana charges getting 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And then holding someone in jail
that's some 3 strike
because
laws,
it served
man.
her purpose.
I have to tell you, I got one of those auto texts from the stupid Democratic Party, and it was like, can we count on your vote for Kamala? And I was like, Kamala is a big dick-sucking whore, and I wouldn't vote for her. She's dumber than
Leave it
President
in.
Potato.
Leave that in.
Don't worry. We don't really cut a whole lot out unless somebody asks us to cut it out.
Yeah, like
That's
there's very
fantastic.
few. But seriously,
I'll make a
when
clip of that.
I've heard I've seen literal threads on this. I'm gonna vote for Kamala because she's a woman. I'm a woman. I'm not voting for that bitch.
Yeah.
Hell no, she's dumb as shit.
Yeah. The Democrat Party is the party of identity politics. They say, hey, because you're a woman, you got to be pro-choice, and you got to vote Democrat. Because you're LGBTQ, you got to vote Democrat. Because you're Hispanic, you're for, immigration, you got to vote Democrat. They put you into these boxes and they say you got to vote this way. and that's what the identity politics of the Democrat Party is. But yeah, she was brutal. Tulsi Gabbard called her out.
Yeah, she's the one that when she shut her down in that's when her campaign ended.
Yep.
Is when she brought out all this stuff that she had done as Attorney General and basically dumbfounded the broad.
Yep.
Like she was just like, duh. You know,
Tulsi Gabbard was a.
she would be a great.
She'd be fantastic. I was hoping that Trump was going to pick her as the VP.
She'd be
spot.
amazing. You know, military veteran, multiple tours, medic, I believe. She knows what she's doing.
Yep. She was a congresswoman from the state of Hawaii. She also is a woman of color. She's Polynesian or Pacific Islander. She was very good. She switched from Democrat to Independent, but she ran in 2016 and in 2020 for the primaries for the Democrat candidate, and she was on stage, and she absolutely eviscerated Kamala Harris. Just
It was
crushed.
destroyed.
I mean, I can eviscerate her, and I'm not that smart in politics.
But you're right. She ended her campaign. She didn't even make it to Iowa. Iowa is always the first state of the primary.
She was on the bus back.
She was done.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to believe. Now, too, here's the other thing that people don't really bring up, but it's been said, it's been out there. So it goes Iowa in the primary process of an election cycle to find out the candidate for a party. It always goes Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. Those are the first four, and then it goes Super Tuesday. So you got Iowa first. Joe Biden didn't even place in the top three. It was Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. Those are the top two. Pete Buttigieg is now, he's the gay mayor from South Bend, Indiana, who now is the transportation secretary, who has no business being the transportation secretary whatsoever. He's got no qualifications or credentials to have that position. Anyways, and since we've seen that too, how many train derailments happened in the last 4 years under his watch as the transportation secretary? I'm getting off the rails here. I apologize. I'll keep going here. But New Hampshire comes around. Who wins that? Of course, Bernie does because he's from Vermont. He's a senator from Vermont. He's from New England. He wins that. Again, Pete Buttigieg does really well. Elizabeth Warren does really well. I think Biden got fourth or fifth. Now, at this time, folks, by the way, Kamala Harris had already dropped out. She didn't even make it to Iowa. She ended her campaign before anybody could even cast a vote for her. So that's how popular she was. And we're supposed to believe that these two were the most popular ticket in the history of politics. But here from then New Hampshire to Nevada, Bernie Sanders wins Nevada. And then it's Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren. Biden's not even placing in the top three in a lot of these states. Then we get to South Carolina. He's big in Biden was big in the Southern black community. He ends up winning South Carolina. But he's still fourth, I believe, at the time amongst delegates that the candidates have earned. Well, after South Carolina, that Monday comes around, Elizabeth Warren drops out. Pete Buttigieg drops out. Amy Klobuchar drops out. All these different people drop out, and they put their backing behind Biden because it looks like Bernie's going to be the candidate. And the Democrat Party doesn't want to run a socialist as their ticket because that's not going to beat Trump in 2020.
No.
So the whole thing looked very fugazi there with what they did. And the idea now that you're forcing the Democrats to vote for somebody that they didn't even cast a vote for in the primary cycle here. No one cast a vote for Kamala. They voted for Biden in the primary elections here. So talk about democracy. They're forcing to say, hey, this is going to be your candidate whether you like it or not. They're not even going to do a primary now. They're just going to say, hey, Kamala's the girl. I don't know who's going to be your VP.
And I mean, the
there.
thing is, go ahead.
I heard something about them saying that they were going to do another primary so that Kamala could have her chance or something.
I think at the end of the day,
Or
this whole
debate or
this whole
something.
thing, the Democrats are lost. You know, they don't have a strong candidate. They didn't have a strong candidate with Biden because he poops his pants. You know, and
He's shaking hands with ghosts.
yeah, and
President Potato.
and now Kamala up there, and the thing is, the Democratic Party has the media. The media is liberal.
100%.
So the media is going to reframe everything to make everything. This is from listening to Bongino and listening to what he has to say.
Yeah.
They're going to reframe everything to make anybody who stands against Kamala as a racist or a misogynist.
Yeah.
Sexist,
And
right.
so Bongino says it best: take 10 people with you when you vote because you got to vote like we're going to lose.
I agree.
I mean, because they
advice.
cheated last time. They're going to cheat again.
Yep.
You know, and if we leave the door open as Trump supporters, if you leave the door open for them, they're going to take advantage of it. They're going to find a way to make it happen again, and then they're going to find a way to cover it up afterwards.
100%.
I want to go back to something
Please.
on the Secret Service thing.
Yep.
You mentioned how the tapes, right? The communications.
Yep.
I'm curious, and maybe Dan Bongino can find this out. I'm curious to find out if the local law enforcement were also operating on a dedicated channel for the local law enforcement that is recorded as well.
Yeah.
Because not just with the Secret Service, but were they checking in with their local dispatch?
Right.
Butler County 911.
Right.
I would love to find out, because that stuff is recorded as well, and that's an independent agency other than the Secret Service.
Great question.
So I think the only person that can mute that is going to be someone from higher up in the government.
Right. Good point.
Yeah,
Great point.
That's gonna disappear.
I mean,
It's Butler County. It's gonna disappear.
here's the thing, though. If it disappears, they're going to have a track record of who was on shift that night and who was answering the calls.
And you know what they're gonna say?
That's fine.
I have no recollection of
That's
that.
fine. You can charge for treason as well.
It'd be like the Epstein thing. Oh, he fell asleep and the camera stopped working. It's, it's like, okay, all right.
I mean,
Sure.
it's the whole thing's crazy to me. But yeah, man. Hey, listen, we're gonna wrap this thing up here because we've been going for a little over an hour.
It's gone fast.
Dude, it always goes fast.
I know.
This was nice. This was awesome.
But
Yeah.
in the closing moments here, is there anything you want to say to anybody who's trying to start a podcast or thinking about going to the Marines? Anything you want to put out there for people?
Yeah, great question there. If you're starting a business, any business, it takes guts. It takes a lot of courage. It takes some balls. You're risking, everything. But you got to be passionate about it. You got to be obsessed with it. If it's not born out of passion or obsession, it most likely will fail unless you have something really unique to offer somebody. And in those instances where you do have a product or a service that is really unique, most of the time it's born out of passion and obsession because they believe that they can offer something to somebody. So if you're starting anything like a podcast business, just make sure it's something you're obsessed with. You're willing to stick through the ups and the downs, and what you guys are doing here is awesome. I love it, and I know you're obsessed with it, and you seem very obsessed with it as well. And your dynamic between the two of you is great. If you're a young person in the United States of America, I see, the patriotism in this country is not what it used to be, but there's still some. Trump kind of, when he came down that escalator in June of 2015 to announce that he was going to run for president, and he started saying some things that people were feeling. He really touched on some things that it really struck a nerve with a lot of people. That's how he garnered as much support as he did. And he was unapologetic about it, which was nice because the previous candidates in the years past, whether it was Bush or McCain or Romney, they were just weak and spineless. So, he stood up there and spoke and said things that people wanted to hear. So I think some patriotism's coming back around. I think it's coming back around. You see some still in our, universities that are liberal now indoctrination camps. You see the flag burnings and things like that. It's hard to see. It's hard to watch.
Communists.
It is. They're communist Marxists, at these colleges, and they're being indoctrinated by, the UCLA study that's out there. It's like 90% of college professors that took place in this took part in the study. They're all left leaning, So biases are going to come across, I'm sure, in the classrooms, in those environments, in universities and colleges. But if you're a young person and you want to serve, you want to wear a uniform for your country, I don't think there's anything better you can do. Plus, it offers you a chance to travel. It offers you a chance to have a good fitness level. It offers you some pride in your country. I was surprised even in boot camp the amount of education that we got. We just got to sit through classrooms of Marine Corps history, United States history. The founding of this country is nothing short of a miracle. 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence. They risked their lives, their honor, and their sacred freedom, and their sacred fortunes to have what we have today. And there's been nothing like it. This constitutional republic is unique. There has been nothing like it before and since. So we have to preserve and protect what we have here because there's a chance that we could lose it. But I think it's honorable, and I think if you're a young person, you want to wear a uniform, you should. You should get out there and put, sacrifice just your time. And when you sign that contract, if you're doing enlisted or active duty, non-active duty, you're kind of signing away your life a little bit. Like I'm committing not myself to the United States and to this military branch and this service for my country. And I think that's very admirable to do. And if there's people out there that, have an inclination to want to do that, go talk to your local recruiter. There's options out there. You can get, there's the Montgomery GI Bill. You can get money for college. You can get in a field or MLS. You don't have to be out there on the front lines being a grunt and getting deployed. There's plenty of different things you can do. plenty of different things that you can do, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman. And now they're letting trans people in. So you can be trans if you wanted to and wear a uniform. So
Well, on Monday you can be a man. On Tuesday you can be female. Whatever you want to do, we're cool with it.
Amen.
But this has been very pleasurable. This has been quite enjoyable being here today. I'm impressed with the setup. I'm impressed with the layout of everything. I'm impressed with you guys. It's been fantastic. I could sit here and talk with you for another hour, but this has been awesome, man.
And we'll stay as long as you want.
No. I actually work tonight. I work tonight at Mario's.
I mean, we don't pay anything.
Also, I have to.
No,
pee
listen,
again.
man, Scott, it's amazing to have you here. It's so great to be able to be part of your world. And I wanted to say something to you. Like you talked about, maybe I should have done this, maybe I shouldn't have that. You're where you are because this is where you're supposed to be, brother. You're good at this. This is your calling. Besides being a great dad and a great husband, I think this is where you're supposed to be because you're affecting people on a daily basis. And for that, man, I say thank you. Kels, anything you want to say?
Hey, man, my earrings this week. They're fucking moths. I love them.
Wow, you got a lot going on. Well, it's all the way up the ear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It takes her about a half hour just to get through the metal detector at the airport.
No, we actually had some problems, like
With the audio?
with the
issue?
audio. It was like ringing because of all of my earrings.
all the metal.
It's a steel plate in your head.
It is. It is. I got it from him.
Mike, you got anything to say, brother? You've been quiet today.
I have been quiet. I did have a couple of questions, but one of the things, Scott, is I wanted to say I thought when you were talking about starting the business, I know, and I'm in recovery, and that's one thing we talk about. But you talked about how you wrote things down with your plan, and one thing you talk about in recovery is that if you talk about it and think about it, it's just an idea. I like what you said. When you wrote everything down about your platform and your idea and the logo and everything else, and that how you follow through with it. That's remarkable that it sticks true with that kind of thinking sticks true with a lot of things. So yeah.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah, write everything down. It's helpful too. And I've looked back now. I have a notebook that I've written everything down. I'm almost through the entire notebook because I just take notes every day. But I look back and I went, man, all this stuff came to fruition here. The people that I wanted to do, the things I wanted to happen. I wrote it down and then I made it happen. And I think it's okay to stop and smell the roses every once in a while, but you keep moving forward. Like both should be very proud, and you too. Doing what you're doing here, and then also, promoting a healthy, sober lifestyle. That's good for everybody, whether you're an addict or you're not. Alcohol is poison, and I work in a bar, and yeah, I do like to have a drink from time to time, but alcohol is poison, and it's ruined a lot of lives. It's ruined a lot of lives. So, what you guys are doing, promoting the healthy, sober lifestyle. There's a lot of guts, courage, what you're doing here. And it's a lot of guts and courage to say, hey, I'm going to make a change in my life, and I'm not going to drink anymore, or I'm not going to, use this substance anymore. That takes guts and it takes courage, and you got to have some fight in you. So I respect everybody here that's doing that in this room. It's awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wait, I have to say something just really quick. It's
Go
just
ahead. It's your show too, babe.
I want to know who your ex is. You went to Bethel Park. We'll do that off camera.
Okay. Yeah. So just so everybody knows, when this episode releases, I have 525 friends on Facebook. I've never talked about my politics on my Facebook ever. So I'm expecting a drop of about half.
Nah,
So
you'll be fine. You called Kamala Harris a whore. It was great.
she is a whore.
I just lost my train of thought completely. Berm Pit Podcast. Why don't you let everybody know where they can see it?
Yeah, Berm Pit Podcast. We're live every Monday on Spreely TV at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard, 1 in the Pacific. You can find Spreely on Roku, Apple TV, Fire Stick. You can also download the Freedom Hub app right to your phone or smart device. It's free. Go into the App Store, type in Freedom Hub, all one word. You can also find us on YouTube for now, Spotify, and Rumble. We are on Rumble. We have a Rumble channel. We don't put any shorts or clips out there. We just put full-length podcasts. I don't have much of a following over there, but also Instagram. We have a Twitter, a TikTok. My wife runs the Twitter and TikTok. The TikTok's growing because we put more of our controversial clips over there.
Yeah.
TikTok's blown up right now. But Berm Pit Podcast, BERMPIT, Berm. Some people always say burn, but it's Berm, like Al explained, Berm, BERMPIT, Berm Pit. And there's a lot of guys we've had on, even local Pittsburgh guys. We had Sean Casey, Paul Spadafora, We've had a lot of great athletes on there too. Max Talbot was on. We had Doug Whaley. He was in the Steelers organization. He was the GM of the Buffalo Bills. He was great too. So we've had a lot of guys on. Robbie and Smokowski, who you know, Robbie, he was a sideline reporter for the Pirates. He's now the sideline reporter for the Texas Rangers. So there's other things on there other than politics. There's some great stories like Mark, episode 42, very inspirational. His message is fantastic. His story is fantastic. So there's other stuff on there than politics if you want to ignore all that stuff, all that crazy right-wing stuff.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, brother, because you're going places, and that's coming from the drunk. Hey, listen, guys, thank you again for joining us. I'm glad Scott could be here. Kelly, Mike, love you guys. If you want to reach out to us, it's steelcityroundtable@gmail.com, all one word, lowercase, steelcityroundtable@gmail.com. We also have Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Threads, Facebook. So reach out to us there. If you want to be on the show, you can get a hold of us, or if you have some ideas for content, we're always open for your ideas. And just remember, this is your home for real people telling what's going on in the world, and there's always a seat here for you at the Steel City Roundtable. We love you guys.
Bye.